Hello and welcome to GiBi's Horror Homestead. My name is GiBi and this is the FNAF community update where I'm going to be answering questions I found in my comment section and later in the video talking about some things that have happened in the community over the last week. We're coming right off of the new year, and so first of all, Toto and I would like to wish you guys a happy new year. We did that already, probably. Oh, what, we did that already? Well, that's too bad, because that wasn't the real New Year. The New Year happened on January 2nd, when me and a bunch of other FNAF YouTubers got together for the FNAF New Year. This is when we did a big stream and talked for like 3 hours about different FNAF theories. We talked, we joked, we sang.
Where is my ball?
Where is my ball?
It's going out.
I'm
running
out
on the road.
There is a...
And we debated about the FNAF series. Hopefully more stuff like that live stream happens in the future. It was really cool having a bunch of people get together. It was the first time I ever talked to Rytoast or ID's Fantasy, not in person, but in call. And I thought it was really cool. You can watch that over on T-Dread's channel, and I might be putting out a post-mortem video sometime in the near future, basically going over the things that I wished I'd said or had meant to say, or clearing up some of the things that I said that I maybe didn't elaborate on correctly. And again, hopefully we can do more stuff like that in the future. Moving on, I'm going to be answering some questions, and this week a lot of the questions are going to be based on the last Fazbear Frights analysis video I made. That was about the story 1:35 a.m. First of all, you should be watching that series because it's awesome. Second of all, you should be watching that series so you learn the truth about Fazbear Fright stories. That truth being, sleeping is bad for you. If Homegirl has a phone and wants to save money when buying an alarm clock, why not just use the phone's alarm clock function? Yeah, so basically what we learn is that this story can't have taken place that far in the distant past. There's a lot of modern things in the story, and thus it's very likely that her phone has an alarm function. I don't think that my first ever phone had an alarm. Maybe it did, I just didn't use it. Every smartphone will have that, but if this took place in like the early 2000s, or maybe it's just that she's so poor that she doesn't have a smartphone, because like she lost all her money when her rich husband, whose name was literally Rich, divorced her. So maybe she has a cell phone, but not a smartphone. I don't know. Either way, this just shows the quality of the writing of the story, that while I was actively reading it, I never asked myself questions like that. It's one thing after the fact, and this goes for movies too, it's one thing after the fact if you're like, well, why didn't the characters just do this? That would have been the smart thing to do. If you're watching the movie or reading the book and you don't think to yourself that as it's happening, it's because the movie has engrossed you enough in the character's plight and in the plot that's going on for you to not stop and ask those, like, actually logical CinemaSins questions. So I think it shows the quality of the story that I never asked myself, why doesn't she just use her cell phone as an alarm clock? I think partly the answer is that when she does do things that are like logical, right? Like, oh, there's a spooky noise outside your apartment, why don't you just sleep somewhere else? When she does do that, it does not help the situation. Oh, what if you're just awake at the time the spooky alarm clock's waking you up, like you're at work? Doesn't help the situation, it makes it worse. So even if the thought does cross your mind while you're reading that like, oh, what if she just uses her phone as an alarm? That might just make things worse. Anyway, great question. Moving on. I'm going to summarize this. I do have it on screen, obviously, so you can read the whole thing if you'd like. It starts by talking about Midnight Motorist and how it's very similar to an event that is depicted in the FNAF movie, where Golden Freddy literally comes to collect Abby from her house. I will also say that something similar happens in the Silver Eyes trilogy, where one of the twisted animatronics comes to Charlie's house and, like, grabs her in its stomach and then, like, walks her to Freddy's. So it happens in the movies, it happens in the Silver Eyes, maybe Midnight Motorist is it happening in the games, where an animatronic comes and snatches, like, the main character child, in this case it would be Dave, to bring them to Freddy's. And I get that, and I see that pattern. There's just other patterns that don't fit across all the different continuities, and so to me this would be in the category of like weak or circumstantial evidence. Like, oh, a kid got snatched in the movie, oh, a kid got snatched in the Silver Eyes, well, in the Silver Eyes it was against their will, in the movie it was with her will, in the movie she killed, the Golden Freddy killed the aunt, in the book they don't kill anyone, in Midnight Motorist they're not killing any of the parents. But the more interesting thing that this comment points out is the idea that the MCI may have happened before the crying child segments of FNAF 4. This would explain the comment that one of the girls makes, one of the NPCs makes, about how, oh, if they catch you, then they hide your body at night and never tell anyone. They kill you. It also explains why Dave says, "These are my friends," when he's looking at the plushes in his room. It's possible that, like Abby, he has literally befriended the ghosts of the children. Remember that Abby was drawing pictures of her little ghost friends before even going to Freddy's in the movie. So Dave has literally befriended these children. It probably doesn't hurt that they'd actually probably be children from his neighborhood. When Dave says, "These are my friends," he means he's talking about the ghosts. William sees this and says, oh no, what if Dave figures out that the animatronics are possessed, or that possibly the bodies are even physically still inside them? And so he then goes and he scares Dave away from the Freddy's location. He doesn't want him going there. When he's dying, psychic friend Fredbear says, we're still your friends, do you believe that? He then fades off into the distance of death, and these ghost friends will come back in happiest day to give him a happy birthday. So it's possible that he befriended them while they were dead and he was alive, and then in the ghost world they were able to be together, and then move on. This commenter brings in how in the security puppet minigame, the security puppet exists because of Charlie. He's there to protect Charlie. Why would Charlie need protection from the security puppet if nothing bad had happened at the restaurants yet? Most people's timelines is either that Charlie dies first, or that Dave dies first via an accident, and then Charlie's murdered outside the restaurant. So why would there be a security puppet there if no one's died yet? If the MCI happened first, then it does make sense that Charlie would need the security puppet. Although I will say, there's really no reason to think that the location actually closed directly after the MCI. Like, that's just something that we guess. We just sort of assume the MCI happens, the restaurant closes, and then it reopens in 1987 for FNAF 2. The big thing that I also think is very important to point out, and this subject might come up in some sort of hypothetical video where someone lists the things that are actually confirmed in FNAF. The big thing that I feel a need to point out is that the date 1985 for the MCI does not exist in the games. That only exists in the Fazbear Fright series and the Silver Eyes. The only dates we have are that the FNAF 4 flashbacks happen in 1983, and FNAF 2 is in 1987. We don't know when the MCI happened. The MCI may have happened in 1983 before any other event happened. There is nothing in the story that technically shows that that's impossible. So while this theory goes against the way that most people look at the story, look at the timeline, look at the franchise, look at everything, it is technically possible. Again, do I believe this? Am I going to incorporate this into my timeline? No, but I feel like if someone released a 2-hour-long video called "Everyone was wrong about FNAF," and the first thing they said was, hey, the 1985 date comes from literally nothing, let's assume that the MCI happens before Charlie and Dave's death, I think that would blow up. I think that would cause a lot of annoying people to come to comment sections of other YouTubers and say, oh my god, did you see this? I'm not annoyed if you come in my comment section and ask me to watch someone else's video. I'm annoyed by the people who come to my comment section and say, actually, GiBi, you're wrong, because I saw this other person's video, and I'm just going to take that into my personality and think that they're right from now on. This theory also obviously fits with the idea that the puppet is last, which comes from Help Wanted 2, where you have to light the gravestones in a certain order, and the last one is the puppet. So the idea would be that the MCI happens, and then Dave dies, and then Charlie dies. There's a lot of evidence for this, and I actually really like it. Again, do I believe it? No. Should it be investigated by smart FNAF people to see if there's actually more evidence towards it, or if there's some big glaring issue that makes it impossible? Yes. And so, ShuckleChan6002, I think that you should take your theory further. Maybe post it on Reddit so other people can work it out. Maybe show other YouTubers this. Maybe make a video yourself. I like the way that you think it through, even though I'm still convinced that Midnight Motorist is not about the Aftons. I just finished the graphic novel of The Silver Eyes. Am I simply confused about there being no mention of Charlie having a deceased twin brother in the game's storyline? No, so the games never say anything about Sammy, which is Charlie's brother in the book. Sammy, for all intents and purposes, does not exist in the game's continuity. I have a conspiracy about this, and my conspiracy is that Sammy does exist, and that the reason that the Save Him minigame is called Save Him in the games is because Henry, who spells out Savhim in that minigame, is like pretending that Sammy is the one who died, not Charlie, which is also what he did in the books. It's a whole thing. It's called arcade theory. So I think that this was sort of like a retcon, like, oh, let's just kind of mash these elements together and people will understand it. But technically, there is nothing about Sammy in the video games unless you have a conspiracy like mine. Was this just added in the canon as an artistic liberty to tell this story, but no connection to the games? Correct. Is the connection that her twin was named Michael, so her twin's not named Michael, her twin is named Sammy. Michael is one of her friends from childhood. Michael is the character who goes into Golden Freddy, so Michael's like the Cassidy character in the Silver Eyes continuity, although there is a Cassidy character. There's a character named Cassidy, she's just one of the other animatronics. I know Charlie's supposed to be Charlie Emily, aka Circus Baby. Again, it's kind of confusing. Charlie is Baby in the books, but obviously not in the games, because in the games, it's Elizabeth. But this book has Michael haunting Golden Freddy, implying Michael in the book is Cassidy as Golden Freddy, or that an unknown Emily is the true first Snatch child. Again, Michael Brooks, which is his character's name in the books, has nothing to do with Sammy the twin. So yeah, Scott just likes reusing names across mediums. Like you have Mike Brooks in the Silver Eyes, Michael Afton Schmidt in the games and now Mike Schmidt in the movie, and none of these are the same character. If the MCI's Remnant is stolen before FNAF 1, how are the classics still haunted by them? So Remnant can be split. If you believe in Molten MCI, or if you just look at the evidence from the Silver Eyes and from Sister Location, Remnant can be split. If Object A has Remnant in it, if my fist, actually hold on, let me just use something. If this remote control has Remnant in it, and I want to take some of this Remnant to bring to life, I need something mechanical. My cell phone. If I want to take Remnant out of this haunted object and put it in my cell phone to bring my cell phone to life, I do not need to take all of the Remnant from this item. I can take a little bit of it and put it in here. In fact, the existence of the scoop implies that the amount of Remnant in something also determines its, like, intelligence, right? Scoop stands for scalable creation of ulterior presence. So, like, my interpretation is that Ballora has more Remnant than the mini-arenas. The mini-arenas and the Biddy-Babs only have a little bit of Remnant, whereas the bigger animatronics like Funtime Foxy and Funtime Freddy and Ballora, etc. have a lot more. So if this is the animatronic that was fully haunted in the MCI, and you take a little bit of Remnant out of it, and you use it to bring to the Sister Location bunker and haunt the Funtime animatronics, this is still haunted, and this is now haunted. So that's how the Remnant can be taken out before FNAF 2 and still have the withered animatronics and then the classic animatronics still be haunted for those games. I think it's really important to not look at Remnant like a Horcrux. It's not a soul of a child that is inhabiting a robot body. It is life force. It is something that has the capability of animating something, of bringing it to life. And you can take, like, imagine a battery. You take a little bit, and you can put it somewhere else over there, and so now that has a little bit of charge, and charge still remains in this first object. Which would then be how FNAF 2, the toy animatronics, are possessed. It's not a fully confirmed thing, but it's a big theory that the reason the toy animatronics are haunted is because parts from the withers are used to, like, repair them. So the toys are only haunted because they have, like, screws and nuts and bolts in them from the withers. And so that little bit of Remnant is then passed into the toys, which animates them a little bit. How has your relationship with the franchise changed since you started making FNAF videos? Do you have any negative associations with it now that it is a job? So firstly, I will say that I've started to get a lot of Christmas and birthday presents that are FNAF themed because people know that about me. It's actually where Toto came from. I actually had a conversation a few days ago with my mother when she was asking me about how the YouTube channel was going, where I pointed out that, like, I've been following FNAF since it originally came out. It's been over 10 years at this point, and she's like, oh, you never talked about it before. And I'm like, well, yeah, there's probably a lot of things that I'm really, really interested and invested in that I've never mentioned just in passing to my friends and family. I just watch videos on YouTube, and I learn a lot about Super Mario Maker, I don't know, from Cleve Gaming. Have I ever talked about that? Oh my god, I'm obsessed with it. Oh my god, I play it all the time. No, but it's something I know a lot about. And so now it's sort of like people are treating FNAF like it's a big part of my personality, even though it's the same as it's always been. I just make videos about it now. I've become the FNAF guy to certain people. I don't see the series any different. Like, obviously I still enjoy it. I'm not, like, put off by the fact that I have to read all these books. I don't think I ever would have if I wasn't making videos. I would have just probably watched summary videos. That's actually what I did originally. This was like years ago at this point, but I watched Impulse737's summary videos about Fazbear frights. So, like, I'm more into it because I'm doing it as a job, but that doesn't change my appreciation or my, like, I'm not, like, angry at the series. I don't, like, groan whenever something happens now because, oh, I have to cover that. Maybe that'll happen if this continues for several years, but obviously I have a lot more stuff going on in my life, even my YouTube career. I have a lot of channels, guys. They're always linked in the description. My main GiBi channel is, like, what I consider to be my main work on YouTube. It's my series, The Absurds. And so when I want to make videos about other things, I just do it on that channel. So no negativity yet. Why does everyone say FNAF 6 took place in the same place as Fredbear's? So there is absolutely no evidence for this. It's just something the community likes because it brings things full circle and because it sort of makes sense. Like the idea that when Fredbear shut down, Henry was probably still the owner of the property. And thus when Henry needed a location for his new Fazbear Entertainment location, he would use that building he still owned. We can also see the building is kind of run down before the start of the game, which would also imply it's been around for a while. So, like, there's circumstantial evidence. There's, like, it's an old building, and Henry bought it, and in the real world, it would be more likely that Henry maintained it. So, like, there you go. Maintain ownership of the property, not maintain, like, the quality of the windows of the building. People just say it as a fact because it's it makes the story better. But no, it's not like proven or confirmed or anything. My friend, the dog in the Wizard of Oz is also spelled T-O-T-O. You were confidently incorrect there. Yeah, I said that Toto from the Wizard of Oz is T-O-D-O, which is how Toto is normally spelled, which is what I said in that video. And so him being named T-O-T-O is different than the Wizard of Oz. It's not, I was literally just wrong. Random question. I remember once seeing a theory video about the FNAF 4 cutscene where the Fredbear plush promises to put the child back together. The video made the point that the text color was actually a slightly different shade of yellow, which matches the text color of the girl with pigtails, suggesting that this line had actually come from the girl rather than the Fredbear plush. None of the FNAF theory videos I've seen account for this detail, and I'm wondering what you think of it. Does this still hold significance? So a lot of people do talk about this. There's two theories when it comes to that text being a different color to begin with. The first is that it doesn't mean anything. Scott literally just used the wrong color by accident. There's other instances of this, like the green shirt bully literally just uses a different hair color between scenes. And the second is that it does have meaning. What that meaning is then split into multiple different interpretations. It's William talking now instead of the bear, or it's the bear talking now instead of William. Or it used to be that William was like talking out of the bear, like doing a silly little bear voice, but now he's talking in his real voice. Or the other way around. The fact that it shares a color with the pigtail girl, and that the pigtail girl has red pigtails like Baby, and maybe like Elizabeth if you squint kind of. Again, the colors don't really work. But maybe the girl is his sister, Elizabeth, and so maybe she's talking now. So yeah, people do talk about this a lot. It's just that, like everything in FNAF, there's so many debates and arguments about it that it becomes like, I have my theory, he has his theory, she has her theory, they have their theory, and we're not going to agree. I personally don't think it really means anything important, but I do not think that most people assume that it's the pigtail girl talking. Either Scott reused that color across two different characters, this end of scene person talking through the bear, and then the girl, or it was an accident. So there you go. Hear me out. FNAF 1 doesn't take place in 1993. In FNAF 1, we hear Phone Guy say in reference to the animatronics, if I were forced to sing those same stupid songs for 20 years and I never had a bath, I'd be a little irritable at night too. We know the FNAF 1 animatronics are the wizards from FNAF 2 just repaired into the FNAF 1 animatronics, and the FNAF 2 location closed in 1987. 20 years to get the earliest possible date for FNAF 1 takes place in 2007. That is a very, very, very literal interpretation of what Phone Guy said and what Phone Guy means, which is why nobody really thinks that that's the case. For one, saying that having that 20-year countdown start from when the wizards were repaired into the classic animatronics is a very odd way of interpreting that line. Obviously, the wizards were repaired into the classics, and so it's possible that when Phone Guy says 20 years, he's still referring to the wizards, and then also possibly the unwizards. So if the Freddy suit was made in 1983 when Freddy's opened, and then that suit deteriorated over time to become the wizards, and then that suit was repaired to become classic Freddy, that's still the same character. And so when Phone Guy says, if I was forced to sing stupid songs for 20 years, he could still be referring to the original suit from 1983. Now, that would still put FNAF 1 in 2003, not 1992, early 90s when people think the game took place, because 20 years from the opening of Freddy's is still after when people think the game took place. But I will say that I don't think anyone interprets it as 20 years after the wizards were repaired. It would be 20 years after the character existed. The second thing is that 20 years is probably an estimation. It's probably not exactly 20 years to the November that FNAF 1 is taking place, since the character started singing their same songs. This actually happens in other fandoms. It really frustrates me. In Star Wars, Yoda says,
"When 900 years old you reach, look as good you will not."
And then he dies. And so people say that he died at age 900. Just like, no, guys, he's rounded to the nearest century. That's just not what he meant. I hate it. Anyway, 20 years could be a rounding thing. I would say that it could be as far away as 17 years, and then obviously you could also round it up to like 22, because I think it was 23, you might round it up to like 25 years, etc. So it could be as few as 17 years since the character originated until the 20 years passed into FNAF 1. It's also possible, and I know that he was talking about the physical animatronic taking a bath in that many years, that he's referring to the existence of the concept of the character. So let's say that in 1979, when this Secret of the Mimic Fall Fest thing's happening, if there's an incarnation of Freddy that exists at that time, and then you're around 20 years down to 17 years, now you're in like 1995 for when FNAF 1 could be taking place, while still taking what Phone Guy says into account, but applying it to the concept of the character rather than the most recent incarnation of the character, and having 20 be more of a rounding thing. Your comment took it very, very, very literally, which is why a lot of FNAF theorists, when they're making timelines and stuff, don't use those numbers, because we don't take it as literally, because that's just not how humans talk. Going back to 1:35 a.m., I said that part of the moral of the story was that Delilah was spending a lot of her time dreaming about the life that she wanted instead of working to make that life happen. Most of the stories in Fazbear Frights are morality tales. Basically, you, the reader, are supposed to learn something from them. And so the fact that Delilah is, like, punished and dies at the end because she's wishing for a better life isn't the point. The point is that you reading the story take away the lesson that if you just start dreaming and not actually living your life, you might go crazy. And so the thing that she does wrong to become haunted by the paranormal force that's chasing her is taking naps and going to sleep and just spending her time dreaming instead of spending her time living. This user has an alternative theory. My thematic analysis of the story was completely different. I read it as being about abandonment and the cycle of neglect. Delilah was abandoned by her foster parents and her husband, and then abandons Ella. Ella is a haunted alarm clock that she gets, and then throws away because it doesn't work, and then haunts her, kind of. Who represents her daughter in her head, and is connected with the version of Baby in the trilogy, who is abandoned Frankenstein style by Henry. Because all this neglect and grooming has put her in a bad situation, she abandons Ella. Maybe it's just because the adult protagonist caused it to feel a lot like the Magnus Archives, another horror anthology series. I don't know anything about that. And they don't really do morality tales the way Frights does. It's more, person is in a vulnerable position because of society and will now suffer a terrible fate at the hands of a supernatural representation of said thing. As for what Ella is, I analyzed this story in my second Fazbear Frights video, so you guys can go check out Absol X Guardian's channel for their interpretation. I think Henry did the same thing he did in the trilogy to try to bring Charlie back and failed. In the Silver Eyes trilogy, it seems like there aren't any owners of Fazbear Entertainment other than Henry and William, since the location never opens without them. But that can't be the case in the games universe. Because he needs to keep making excuses while building a new body for Charlie, he had to rework his Ella designs to be a sellable product. It has more features than the Ella in the trilogy because he kept adding more electronics to try to make a real Charlie. Henry having a bunch of brain damage and trying and failing to kill himself explains where he was until FNAF 6. My theory is that Eleanor is the games universe / Stitchline version of Baby from the trilogy. They're described basically the same, and if Henry will never succeed in bringing Charlie back, William never becomes suspicious and steals her. This is going to be incomprehensible unless you've read The Silver Eyes, but I'm going to keep going. It's a good comment, it's good noticing, it's good observations. She has this big cathartic moment about making her own identity, choosing the name Eleanor, and deciding to become a monster in front of the Ella doll that features in the story. That's how she's connected to it, when it predates the man in room 1280. It goes around and does haunted stuff, which is how it has a representation and Taggart is looking for it. What happened to Delilah was in her head, a Golden Freddy-style psychic projection, helped along by her own guilt and problems. The Stitch Wraith eventually gathers her because Jake can't tell the difference between Andrew and Eleanor's aura since they're all mixed together. I think people underestimate the relevance of the Silver Eyes trilogy to the gamesverse. Obviously, it has to be a different continuity, but so many concepts and even names like William Afton, Henry Emily, and Charlie Charlotte come from the trilogy confirmed later in the games. Technically, Charlie's name has never been confirmed in the games. Some people think that the girl, Henry's daughter who becomes the puppet is actually Cassidy in the games. It's the whole thing. But yes, good observations, good conclusions. I'm going to be going forward in my series looking at the Fazbear Frights novels, 1, looking at Frights fiction, and then 2, seeing if it's possibly in continuity with the Silver Eyes, just because there's a lot of things that connect the two stories. I'm not saying that it's possible, I'm saying going forward I'm going to be playing myself as someone who thinks it's possible and looking at the evidence as we go. Instead of starting with a conclusion and then looking for evidence, I'm going to be looking for the evidence and then coming to a conclusion. Another thing about Ella that I find interesting is that she's included on one of the arcade cabinets in Security Breach. In Security Breach, it's clearly meant to be Ella from the novel trilogy since she's alongside Theodore, Charlie's plush rabbit. And another cabinet features her unicorn, Stanley. Considering these were toys made for Charlie by Henry, I feel it points to the novels being in-canon books, similar to your Frights fiction theory. This is something else that a lot of people do believe. It's a little harder to make the leap that the Silver Eyes trilogy is an in-universe book, because it delves so deeply into the personal lives of Henry. Like, it seems obvious that the people in the universe, in the games universe, wouldn't know intimate details about, like, Henry's personal life and his family in order to then write the Silver Eyes, whereas the Fazbear Fright stories are a lot more general. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. Or it suggests that Henry or someone else marketed these as toys in the games universe. Another cabinet features Fetch, which might mean he's a real Fazbear property. Like you said in your Tiger Rock video, he may exist in some form without Frights being canon. Fetch also, in the books universe, was a toy actually manufactured by Fazbear Entertainment, so it's possible that the toy is in the games universe even if the haunted version isn't. But again, I think it would be strange to give him his own game without the books, since he would be an obscure character. The cabinet I find most compelling is the Bunbarians, which features Theodore and Ralpho from Bunny Call. Ralpho in the stories is not a Fazbear entity at all, so I can't really imagine a reason for him to be here other than Frights fiction. I agree. Obviously, it could just be an Easter egg, but I don't think that Scott would do that. If he's just a random Fazbear character in the game's continuity, it would have to be extremely far removed from the books. The last option would be that this is just Steel Wool shoehorning random FNAF properties into Security Breach without consulting Scott on the canon, but I do hope they wouldn't be that careless. I agree. I know that some of the things in Security Breach are also referencing to the Fazverse fan initiative. So to us, to the players, to the real world, they are just Easter eggs. But it's possible that in the FNAF games universe, these are like, basically they have the same relationship to the real Five Nights at Freddy's game, where like people made games and then Fazbear Entertainment is like, you can't do that. And then they're like, actually, maybe you can do that. You just gotta, join our little club. We get to make arcade games based on your intellectual property, but we're not going to sue you and you can make money off of them. That's all for the question, so I wanted to mention a few videos from the FNAF community for this last week. For one, this Twitter user, and there's probably other people who did this, but this is the tweet I saw. This Twitter user timed the 2025 New Year midnight on New Year's Eve to correspond with Jackie's Box song, and that is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
I'm running out on the road, there is a car, and this is going to hit me!
Secondly, I want to talk about the I Solved the Next FNAF Game video by Johnny the Night Guard. It's a great video for people who don't know what's going on with like the upcoming game and the Help Wanted 2 update. I don't agree with all of his conclusions, but that's the point of being a FNAF theorist. I like the way that he looks at evidence. I do like the way that he uses the Edwin and Dave from the Jackie's Box video to indicate Edwin and Dave in the game's continuity, because that's what I do as well. But it's just a great video to get people up to date with what's going on, and also obviously his prediction for the game that's going to come out soon. And secondly, I want to draw your attention to Bonk Boy's video. Overthinking yapping about Elizabeth Afton's voice lines for over an hour. This is just a great video, and this is the kind of content that I love watching when it comes to FNAF, because you see people working through things, not in real time because obviously it is a scripted video, but you see people working through things as they look at more and more evidence, taking all of Baby and all of Elizabeth's voice lines and trying to come to a conclusion about like what they meant, what emotion was trying to get across. He looks at real world things like what the actors were told about their characters and from interviews with the voice actors about what they know about their characters. It's a really interesting video. Obviously a lot of research was done, and that's the kind of video that I wish would like blow up more in the community. Independent research into one specific topic for a long period of time to come to interesting conclusions and to lay out facts in manners that other people haven't before. I could not recommend the Bonk Boys video enough. And with that, thank you for watching. Be sure to be nice to each other in the comments, consider supporting the creators you admire, never lose sight of the things that are important to you. If you want your question answered, you can leave those questions in the comments below this video. I do read all the comments across all of my videos, so if you leave it anywhere, I'll see it, but specifically in this video makes it a little easier. And remember that FREDDIES stands for Friendly, Respectful Engagement, Discussion, and Discourse Yields Success. Whether it's on my channel and my comments, or in the chat in a live stream, if you're not friendly to people, Freddy will be sad.